The close of spring often brings unpredictable weather, and this month's unexpected mix of rain and warmth had me out mowing the lawn earlier than usual. Last year, around this time, we were hit with a snowstorm, so mowing early seemed like a small inconvenience to avoid a repeat. With the tax season behind me, it felt great to be outdoors. My backyard slopes down to a creek lined with woods, with the basement partially exposed at the back due to the level front yard. This layout lets me store my lawn equipment in the basement, which I really appreciate. After mowing, I was eager to shower off, especially because of my grass allergies. Just as I reached the top of the stairs, I overheard my wife chatting with her friend. While this wasn't surprising, what they were saying made me pause before opening the door. My name is David Grant, but everyone calls me Dave. Back in school, I earned the nickname Chief, after a character from a show called Chiefs, even though the show was before my time. I graduated with a degree in finance and quickly passed my CPA exams. Now, I lead a team at a prominent Chicago firm that specializes in forensic analysis to uncover financial fraud and money laundering. My work has even led to consulting for federal investigations. I met Sarah during our junior year in college while she was majoring in political science with plans for law school. She was tall, with long auburn hair, and a confident presence that captivated me from the start. Unfortunately, Sarah didn't sit next to me or end up in any of my project groups. It took me a month to work up the courage to talk to her. I cracked a silly joke, and to my relief, she laughed. A genuine, hearty laugh, not just a polite chuckle. We started talking, and I asked if she'd like to grab coffee after class. "I've been hoping you'd ask for weeks," she said with a smile. For the last 2 years of college, we were nearly inseparable. Our parents weren't thrilled at first, but we moved in together for our senior year. Eventually, they saw how committed we were and accepted it. I thought life couldn't get any better, but it did. After graduation, I secured a job at a major accounting firm in Chicago, with a decent salary for a 22-year-old just starting out. Sarah got into law school at Northwestern, so we stayed in our student apartment. My firm offered to cover my MBA, so I enrolled in classes as well. I used the city's public transit system for my commute, which made owning a car unnecessary and helped us save money. 3 years later, Sarah graduated, and I proposed to her during her celebration dinner at a steakhouse in the city's downtown area. We got married 6 months later. Sarah took a job as an assistant district attorney in Cook County, just north of the city. We decided to buy a house in Evanston, where the courthouse was located and the regional rail line ended. This way, I could take the train to work each day. Though the commute was long, about 80 minutes one way, it was better than dealing with Chicago traffic. Sarah and her mother picked out the house. It was a perfect starter home with 3 bedrooms. One room was set up as an office with 2 desks, one for me, since I occasionally worked from home, and one for Sarah's legal work. Another room was a guest room, and the last was our master bedroom. The house was conveniently close to her parents' place, which Sarah pointed out would be handy for babysitting when we had kids. Being an only child, I always wanted siblings, and Sarah and I had talked about having children since our junior year. We decided to wait until she was settled in her career. Now that we were ready, we agreed just 2 nights ago to stop her birth control and start trying for a baby. I was happier than I had ever been, and that's when the sound I overheard made my hand freeze on the doorknob. "Sarah and I decided it's time for me to get pregnant," Sarah exclaimed with excitement. Her friend, Amanda Brooks, immediately reacted with an enthusiastic, high-pitched squeal that reminded me of whales stranded on a beach. As I stood on the stairs, I couldn't help but smile at their excitement, which matched my own joy at the thought of becoming a father. But just as I reached for the doorknob again, a question made my smile fade and took away my happiness. "That's fantastic, Sarah," Amanda said. "But what about Luke?" "Luke?" Sarah whispered urgently. "Dave is outside mowing the lawn." There was a brief pause, and I could almost picture her scanning the area, waiting for me to appear. Then she continued speaking. "I've already told Luke that I'm ending things with him. He was okay with it. With Hargrove stepping down from the state senate, Luke thinks he actually has a shot at the seat. Getting caught having an affair with a married coworker would definitely hurt his chances." Just like that, 3 sentences shattered my world. Luke Morton was Sarah's boss at the DA's office, a widower in his late 40s. He had lost his wife to cancer, leaving him to raise their daughter alone. Luke was deeply involved in politics, and Sarah had often shared stories about his political moves aimed at advancing his career. Now, I realized how she had access to all that behind-the-scenes information. "Really?" Amanda asked. "Just quitting cold turkey? You've been involved with him for 6 months, and now you're just going to walk away?" Her teasing tone made me want to lash out. I had known Amanda from Northwestern, and although she was now Sarah's best friend, I thought she was still my friend too. It turns out I was wrong.
"Stop it," Sarah said, laughing. "You're so naughty. Luke was a great lover, but he was just a bit of fun. I love Dave, but Luke only used me for intimacy and power. There was no love, just raw desire. Now that Dave and I are planning a baby, I don't want any complications. I love Dave, and I'm committed to being a good and faithful mother."
I wondered how many more cliches I was going to have to endure. Finding a strange car in the driveway and discovering them in bed together would complete the nightmare. The urge to burst into the room and scream or to destroy everything in sight was overwhelming, but my body felt paralyzed. Stunned, I was unable to move, and my heartbeat thudded in my ears. "So quitting completely?" Amanda nudged. Sarah responded with another giggle. "Not exactly cold turkey," she confessed. "I have a conference with Luke in Pittsburgh next week. We'll have our final fling there. I'll miss the closeness, but Dave and the baby are more important." I couldn't handle it any longer, but I didn't know what to do next. Loving Sarah was tearing me apart. My business instincts kicked in, and I realized I needed to step back and plan my next move. Making a loud racket on the steps, I acted like I was coming up the stairs. When I opened the door and entered the kitchen, Sarah and Amanda were sitting there with their teacups. Was there a hint of guilt on Sarah's face? "Are you okay, honey?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. It dawned on me that my cheeks were wet with tears. "Allergies," I muttered. "Spring's going to be rough." "Go upstairs and take a shower," she said. "Just leave your clothes outside the bathroom, and I'll wash them right away so they don't mess up your closet. I bought you a new box of allergy medicine last week, and it's in the cabinet." "Thanks," I said as I headed for the stairs. I needed some time to think. The next morning was Monday, and I took advantage of an early meeting to slip out of the house before Sarah woke up. The night before, I had used my allergies as an excuse to go to bed early because I was overwhelmed with emotions. As I rode the train, I couldn't stop thinking about what I had overheard. On one side, my wife had been unfaithful but claimed she was ending it to stay with me and have our child. Some might say I should accept that and be thankful she's returning to our marriage with the intention of being a good wife and mother. However, a voice in my head questioned if she might do it again in the future. Would she have another affair once the kids are in school? If that happened, a divorce would involve the kids, and Sarah would likely get custody while I'd face hefty alimony and support payments. As a financial analyst, I was trained to think about risk and reward. This situation was no different. My trust in her was shattered. The excuse of just an affair overlooks the core issue. It's the utter lack of respect shown to the partner. If the cheater truly didn't think their actions would hurt the other person, they'd be open about it, and I would have known all along. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't have accepted her being with Luke, but at least if she had talked to me about it, some respect would have been shown. Sarah's behavior demonstrated just how little she truly respected me. I went through my workday, but my mind was preoccupied with what to do next. Without solid evidence beyond the conversation I overheard, I hadn't noticed any signs of the affair over the past 6 months. Confronting Sarah directly without proof seemed risky and unlikely to yield any reward. Sarah would deny it, and Luke Morton would deny it. Pursuing the case in court would be financial ruin, as every judge, politician, and lawyer in the area knew Luke. I'd be buried to protect his reputation. Leaving and starting fresh somewhere else crossed my mind. The idea was tempting, but the house would feel like a burden since Sarah couldn't afford it on her own, and we had little equity. She'd need to sell it quickly to avoid foreclosure, and in today's market, that would be nearly impossible, ruining both our credit scores. As a CPA, having poor credit would make it hard to get a new job. If you can't manage your own finances, how can others trust you with theirs? Before taking any action, I needed solid proof. It was surprising where I eventually found it. 3 days later, although I was trying to stay composed, I still had no concrete evidence to support what I had overheard. Her personal laptop was clean. No secret email accounts, no provocative lingerie hidden away, and no suspicious receipts. Everything seemed clear. Then Sarah called me at work to say we were invited to a party at Luke Morton's home on Friday night. I figured it was his big announcement for his U.S. Senate candidacy. I was tempted to make a grand revelation, but without evidence, it felt pointless. We arrived right on time for the event. Morton had a sizable home near Lake Michigan with a small horse farm. A large tent was set up in the backyard for guests. When we walked in, Morton was at the head of the receiving line, acting like royalty. As a widower, he didn't have a wife to host, so he had apparently enlisted his 21-year-old daughter to help. She greeted guests with practiced ease. When it was our turn, Morton greeted Sarah with a broad smile, saying, "Sarah, you made it. How wonderful." He gave her a polite kiss on the cheek before turning to me. "David, great to see you again. I'd be lost without your wife, but I hear you'll need to let her go soon as you start expanding the family." He laughed at his own joke. "Just make sure to return her to me when you're done, and there'll be no hard feelings." Another laugh followed while Sarah blushed slightly. I was seething inside. His smug comment clearly had an underlying meaning that he thought I missed. "I'm not sure what the future holds," I replied in a flat, neutral tone, lacking any warmth. It was similar to how I would report audit results, professional but detached. Morton actually turned pale, and Sarah nudged me, whispering about my rudeness. Morton then smoothly moved on to the next guest, leaving us with his daughter. Though I was fuming inside, I couldn't help but notice Julie Morton, who was stunning. Her dark red hair and radiant smile reminded me of a young Maureen O'Hara. While Sarah resembled a graceful dancer, Julie looked like she should be on a swimsuit calendar, with her striking looks, healthy figure, and perfect skin. She was every photographer's dream. Luke Morton had crafted the ideal political family. He appeared to be the quintessential wise statesman and family man. The death of his wife from cancer had made her the perfect martyr. Attacking her would be political suicide. Julie, his daughter, was the perfect princess, homecoming queen, a senior at Northwestern majoring in business and pre-law, a former gymnast, and now a member of the cheerleading squad. According to Sarah, Julie planned to audition for the Chicago Bears cheerleading squad at their next open call now that she was 21. With a saintly deceased wife and a beautiful, smart, photogenic daughter, Morton was set to win over the press. "David!" Julie exclaimed, hugging me warmly. This was more than a polite party hug. It was a genuine, enthusiastic embrace. Her body pressed against mine in a surprisingly pleasant way. "You look fantastic. No wonder Sarah keeps you hidden away. You never come to our parties. You should take it easier. Working too much isn't good for you." She managed to say all that in one breath. My anger shifted to complete shock. Instantly, I made a few polite comments about how great she looked and tried to move away, but then realized two things. First, Julie hadn't greeted Sarah. Second, what parties was she talking about? Sarah didn't give me a chance to ask, as she quickly jumped in with her own greeting to Julie. We had no choice but to let the next guests take their turn in line. As Sarah and I moved through the crowd, I couldn't help but wonder what Julie knew. After getting a drink for my wife, I asked, "What was Julie talking about with all these parties?" Sarah just gave a dismissive smile and snorted. "Oh, she's just being a little brat. Luke sometimes holds team meetings and strategy sessions here. He says he thinks better with a drink in hand, and you never know who might be nearby at a bar. She's been around a few times when we've met here. And don't tell anyone. But Luke let her have drinks at home even before she turned 21. That explained where it was happening. The jerk was having an affair with my wife right here at his house under the guise of team meetings. They might even have real meetings where Sarah stayed until the end. Or maybe she left early and came back after everyone else had gone. That way, a team of lawyers would be less likely to question why Sarah stayed behind to help the boss clean up. With his wife gone and his daughter in college, he had no need for a discreet hotel room. Hence, no records of their rendezvous. "Does Julie attend these team meetings?" I asked. Sarah brushed off the question. "No, she's just been home a few times when her classes were canceled. She's only teasing her dad about having parties during work hours." She pulled on my arm. "Come on, love. Let's get you a drink." For the next hour, Sarah stayed close to me, never more than a foot away. We chatted with several of her coworkers, and a few mentioned our plans to start a family. They expressed their sadness about losing Sarah for a while, but were excited for us. Honestly, it felt a bit awkward. Why did so many people know about our plans? An hour later, Luke Morton called for everyone's attention. Standing beside him with a smile was his daughter. He began by thanking everyone for attending and then moved into his major campaign announcement. Even though it was expected, everyone acted enthusiastic. I noticed the local paper's publisher and one of his reporters taking notes nearby. It was clear this would be a major story in tomorrow's edition. I won't drag you through the rest of the party details. It could have been a pleasant evening if my heart wasn't in pieces and my mind wasn't racing, trying to find proof of what I'd heard. About 90 minutes after the big announcement, Karen Mitchell, the first assistant district attorney, came over to say that Luke wanted to meet with his staff. Karen, who ran the office while Luke was an elected official, was the real powerhouse there. The DA changed every 4 years, but Karen was a constant presence, known for her toughness as well as her honesty and integrity. She was highly respected in the legal field. Sarah took the job partly because of Karen. I liked her too. Karen had been married for over 30 years to an electrician who supported her through college and now ran a successful electrical contracting business. Their devotion to each other always seemed like a model for Sarah and me. "Sorry to take your wife away, Chief," Karen said. "Luke wants to go over office organization after he's done with his campaigning." Then they both left. I moved away from a small group of spouses who were left behind for the meeting and headed to the far side of the large pool, away from the party's patio. There was a wicker swing chair hanging from chains, partially in the shadows. It was visible enough that people could see me if they looked, but not so obvious that I'd stand out. It was an ideal spot for me to gather my thoughts. Less than 5 minutes after I sat down, a voice broke the silence. "So this is where you're hiding," a voice said softly. Looking up, I saw Julie sliding into the wicker swing beside me. She positioned herself facing me slightly. Her little black dress clung to her tanned thighs, subtly highlighting her figure without giving too much away. It was both alluring and innocent. The fact that I noticed this, almost like an observer, spoke volumes about my state of mind. "You seem like you're carrying a huge burden," she said. "Talking about my problems with my wife's lover's daughter was the last thing I wanted, no matter how attractive she was." "We've just had a lot of audits at the office," I said, hoping to end the conversation. "Really?" Julie responded, showing genuine interest. "I just finished my last accounting course at school. We spent quite a few classes discussing forensic accounting and its role in law enforcement. I found it really intriguing. That caught me off guard, even in my current state." "Seriously?" I asked, not quite believing it. "It's not exactly glamorous," she said, "but it's like detective work. You sift through a huge amount of information to find the right pieces, and then piece them together to see the full picture. It's even more challenging when people try to hide the information." "Most people don't see it that way," I agreed. Julie went into great detail about what she had learned and why she found it so interesting. I was actually impressed. I've seen interns at the firm who couldn't explain the topic as well. Focusing on her words helped me push aside my anger and her looks, allowing me to slip into a mentoring role. It provided a bit of relief from my emotional distress. "You really did enjoy the class," I said. "You have a great understanding of the subject." Julie blushed at the compliment. For a moment, the glamorous image faded, and I saw a genuinely touched young woman. "I've thought about joining the FBI after I graduate," she shared. "Dad wants me to either become a prosecutor or work at one of his friend's law firms, but I'm not sure that's what I want." "You should pursue your own goals rather than just following your father's path." I meant it sincerely, even though I wouldn't mind disrupting that guy's plans. "I've collaborated with the FBI when audits revealed criminal activity. They're sharp professionals." Before Julie could respond, Sarah emerged from the shadows. "So this is where you've been hiding," she said playfully. "You weren't up to any mischief, were you?" Julie faced my wife with a bright smile. "We were just discussing Dave's job. I recently studied it in class and wanted to hear from an expert." "Dave is definitely that," Sarah said proudly. "I once read an audit report where an employee was embezzling funds using his boss's login. Dave figured out that the transfers happened while the boss was away on a trip, but the logins were from the corporate office. Most people would have stopped there, but Dave dug deeper. I could have secured a conviction on that employee my first day out of law school. Dave practically did the DA's job for them." Sarah's pride in me was evident, and it threw me off. How could she be so proud and loving while carrying on a 6-month affair with her boss? My confusion must have shown as Sarah asked, "What's the matter, dear?" "Nothing," I replied. "Just thinking about a problem." "Stop that, it's a party," Sarah chided me. Without missing a beat, she added, "Dave, you won't believe the opportunity I've been given. Luke and Karen want me to move into an administrative role before I go on maternity leave. That way, when I leave, no cases will be left unresolved. I'll be working directly with Karen." A part of me felt relieved at the thought of Sarah being away from Luke, but my hope was short-lived. "I'll need to travel occasionally," Sarah continued. "I'll be delivering sensitive documents to Luke during his campaign. I won't be involved in his campaign, but I'll still get to see some of the behind-the-scenes action. It's going to be so exciting." I felt my heart break all over again. Even though Sarah said she was ending her affair to focus on having a baby, I could easily see her slipping back into the affair once she got involved in the campaign. And if she did get pregnant, how could I be sure it was mine? Luke is about my age and looks like me. Without a DNA test, it would be nearly impossible to tell. My anger started to build up, but I forced myself to stay calm. This wasn't the moment to lose control. Julie and Sarah started chatting about her new role in the campaign. They quickly got absorbed in their discussion, and I was left out. I used the chance to pull myself together. After tonight, I would begin making a plan. I needed a way to combat Luke's political influence, but honestly, I had no idea how to start. 2 days later, the solution walked into my office. "Your 4 o'clock appointment is here," my assistant announced through the open door. "We're not allowed to call them secretaries anymore." I checked my Outlook calendar and didn't see any appointments scheduled. Before I could respond, she walked in. Julie Morton. "Hi, Dave," she said as she entered. Her long, dark red hair cascaded down her shoulder. She wore a light sundress that highlighted her beautiful legs and sandals with straps that wrapped almost up to her knees. Her chest was modestly covered with no cleavage visible, but the fabric hugged her suggestively. The dress was held up by 2 thin straps, leaving her arms bare. I was at a loss for words as I watched her walk in. "I hope this isn't a problem," Julie said as she shut the office door behind her. I told Mary we were meeting to talk about my career and how Sarah works for my dad. I stood up politely. "It's good to see you. I was just working on some reports." I pointed to the chairs in front of my desk. After she sat down, I took my seat. "What would you like to discuss?" Julie's cheerful expression quickly faded. "I think you already know, Dave. I saw your reaction when you spoke with my father. I'm really sorry he's causing you trouble." I was taken aback. This wasn't what I expected at all. "What are you talking about?" I asked carefully. Julie looked troubled. "It's about my father having an affair with your wife." I slumped back in my chair, shocked by her directness. "Did you just find out?" Julie asked softly. I nodded. "I'm sorry. When did you find out?" "About 3 months ago," Julie said. "I'm not sure when it started, but I discovered it in February. I went home early one Friday and found them having one of their meetings at our house. I was supposed to have a late lunch with a high school friend, so I just dropped by to say hello and leave. Dad asked when I'd be back, and I said after dinner. Then my friend got sick and couldn't come. I picked up some lunch and went back home. That's when I saw my dad and Sarah being intimate in our hot tub. I took photos, including some of them running without clothes back into the house. There was a foot of snow outside, too." "You took pictures of your dad being intimate?" I asked, astonished. I also wondered if I could get copies of those photos. They would be very useful for the divorce. Julie seemed to sense my thoughts. She reached into her bag, pulled out a large envelope, and set it on my desk. "These are the photos from that day, plus a few extras." Julie gave a sly smile. "Dad has a security system at the house. It covers the entire outside and several rooms inside. If you have the website key fob and password, you can access everything from almost anywhere. There's also a thumb drive with video footage." I was stunned. Luke's daughter was giving me everything I needed for both the divorce and to take down her father. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. Julie's sad expression shifted to anger. "Because," she said softly, "I loathe that man more than you ever could." I stayed silent and waited. After a brief pause, she began to explain. "My dad met my mom when she was a college student. He was a rookie lawyer assigned to an intimate crimes unit in Chicago. My mom had come from Ireland for school. Her wealthy family was killed in Belfast, so she moved here to escape the troubles." Her tone became softer, echoing her mother's accent. "Mom was dating a loser who beat her badly enough that she ended up in the emergency room." Julie placed a thick green and lace-covered book on my desk. "After her death, I found her journal, and I learned she was quite submissive. She liked a strong man who took charge. This jerk pushed her too far, leading to her hospitalization. Dad was assigned to her case. They met, he sent the jerk to jail, and a year later, they were married. Dad was always ambitious. He got a smart, beautiful woman with an exotic accent. Mom got a strong man who would protect her. I was born a few years later. Dad pushed me into gymnastics, thinking it would boost his political career if I made it to the Olympics." "Do you know what usually ends gymnastics careers?" I shook my head. "Never really thought about it." Julie grinned. "They call it the 3 Bs. I was pushed into cheerleading and told to be the perfect all-American girl. I didn't mind performing, but by the time I was 16, I realized I was just a tool for my dad's ambitions. My mom figured it out early on. Dad was cheating almost from the start of their marriage. She knew and pleaded with him to stop, but she was too powerless to do anything. Being a staunch Catholic, divorce was not an option for her." Julie paused to collect her thoughts. After a moment, she went on. "Sometimes I wonder if her poor response to cancer treatment was because she unconsciously wanted to die or was intentionally undermining her treatment. Anyway, I was with her when she passed away. The official story says Dad was in court winning a murder conviction. In reality, he had the doctor change the time of death while he was at his assistant's apartment celebrating. He paraded Mom as his trophy, and the media loved the story of the heroic DA saving the battered woman. He even hit her a few times that I saw." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, feeling confused. "Because you don't deserve this, Dave. My dad is a terrible person. After Mom died, he kept his affairs quiet until I went to college. That's when he started having these meetings at the house. They're not just for work. He also holds them for charity groups he's involved with. I know he's involved with 2 other women from those groups. One of them even thinks it's true love and plans to leave her husband. Is that what Sarah believes? I inquired, even though I was already pretty sure of the answer. Julie shook her head. No, she seems to think it's just fun. They say power is the greatest aphrodisiac, and Sarah seems to prove that.